Hey everyone, Duke Nugget 3D here with another mask in my collection to show off for you guys. And today I have for you, as the title suggests, the Russian Protivogaz Modernizirovannoy Konstrukcji 3, or PMK-3 gas mask as it's known. This one was sent to me with another mask which I'll be reviewing shortly after this by our good old friend Hype in the r/gasmasks official Discord. You can check out r/gasmasks and join the Discord through there. But anyways, back onto the mask. Not really much that I know in history about the PMK-3. This is pretty much Russia's current issue mask. They are attempting to replace it with the PMK-4, but so far the PMK-4, as of the time of making this video, is still in experimental phase. So PMK-3s and older PMK-2s, 1s, and possibly even older gen masks, at least in use for training, are still in use with Russia today. But the most prominent mask in the Russian military is the PMK-3. It was designed presumably sometime around the mid-1990s as an upgrade to the PMK-2 series, which used the MB-180 facepiece, which allowed for the bayonet-style adapters to be swapped out on either side of the facepiece. And the PMK-3, which used the MB-2 facepiece, took it a step further, and they sort of refined all of the ergonomics with the facepiece. They added an internal oral nasal cup and a much improved drinking device on the chin rather than on the coiled around the voice diaphragm with the infamously poor quality tubing that I've mentioned in previous PMK reviews. It did improve a lot, however, as with most advancements in Russian gas mask development, it was sort of a take one step forward, take two steps back sort of deal, because with every advancement that was added to this, there was a lot of integrity that was sacrificed in the process, and I'll get into that in a moment. There really isn't too much else to say about this mask. I know that there is not a whole lot of variants of this. It's just, I'm pretty sure that there are commercial variants of this mask made by Tambov Mesh, but this particular example is the military PMK-3 kit. So without further ado, before I try and pull references and resources out of my ass that I haven't really studied for yet, allow me to get into the kit here. So first off is the carrier, which, again, this is probably the first thing that's the biggest step down from the older PMK-2 carriers, which had reinforcement plastic panels lining it, which would have made the mask easier to put in, but this is just a loose, floppy carrier, not really much to it. It opens with the same Velcro and single lift-the-dot style snap. As you can see, it is made out of this VSR98 Flora sort of mesh material. I believe this is actually a material used on a specific Russian chemical suit that's also designed for this mask. I don't know the designation of it. If you do know the designation of the suit that's made of this material, feel free to inform me down in the comments below. Again, I don't know too much about this material. But the carrier is obviously a big step down from the older PMK carriers. You can see the markings on the interior. I believe that is the manufacturer date of 2005. There is a OTK inspection stamp, and really not all that much is different from the original PMK carriers aside from the material and the lack of reinforcements, because it has the same two pouches spanning the interior of the carrier for the waterproofing bag, anti-fog inserts, etc. And then you have like this pocket over on the side for a personal decontamination kit of some sort. Probably an IPP8. I could be wrong on that. They probably use something different nowadays. It has a typical belt loop on the back. It has a thin shoulder strap, which can be removed with a snap and D-ring. This particular carrier is a bit worse for wear because I noticed the D-rings are starting to rust. I'll have to do something about that, make sure they don't rust further. And then they have a waist strap here, which pretty self-explanatory, nothing really to mention about that. Here we have the face form for the mask, which was used to keep it from warping while in storage. And this one is different from the normal ones because, as you can see, this one has a cutout along the bottom for presumably the drinking device, honestly. That's the only reason why I could have thought they added this, really. But other than that, pretty typical face form. You have the anti-fog lens outserts here, which are especially shaped for the PMK-3's elliptical eyepieces, and I've heard that these are the biggest pain in the ass to install out of any type of lens outsert system. And plus it makes the mask look pretty ridiculous, so I would probably avoid these unless you absolutely had to use them, say if the temperature required you to have the outserts, but other than that, they're pretty terrible. You have the hydrophobic winterization / mudguard sock, which would go over the canister. I am missing the plastic spacer ring that would elevate the fabric from the canister inlet, but it would still work with it regardless. We have the rubber bands, which are used for I believe for tying off the waterproofing kit, which again I am lacking the waterproofing bag, which a person said he lost while out in an airsoft match, unfortunately. So that's not too big a deal. I got this mask for free, so I'm not complaining. You have the user information tag, where a plastic card would be inserted into this and then sewn onto the side of the carrier to indicate who the mask was issued to. Yeah, the anti-fog lens inserts, which actually did not come with this set. I actually picked these up during my visit with Moulage earlier this month, and so I actually had these on hand, luckily, because this kit was actually missing them, so that's something to be thankful for. You have the canister here, which, again, I don't know the designation of the canister. I have yet to translate the type of canister. It's the typical bayonet-style canister, similar to the PMK-2s, or this one is a more brownish olive rather than the green olive one that I have with my PMK-2. Typical filter plug on the bottom. You got a screw-off cap, and this one actually came with the bayonet to 40mm GOST adapter on it, so I'm thankful I have one of those now. And then we have the mask itself with the drinking device, which I have inserted for the sake of the video. The drinking device, as I said, is a big step up from the older PMK-2 drinking device, but it also has its flaws, namely in that you have to screw it onto the canteen in order to use it, where it would become a problem in gaseous and contaminated environments where anything in the air could potentially affect the water. And then the attachment to the mask isn't that bad. There is a sort of spring-loaded system on the adapter on the mask end, and then this sort of pushes into that, and then they have a little cap here that sort of locks onto it when you twist it. Unfortunately, the O-rings on this adapter, one of them had completely shorn free. It was completely stretched out and just terrible, but one of them is still fine, so I'd imagine the system still seals and functions. I've yet to actually drink through this yet, so I may test it out later and kind of update you guys on how that really works. It is a very intrusive drinking system, but I'll get into that in a moment. Now you have the mask itself. A very unique appearance for a Russian mask. It's much different than the older PMK masks with their notable triangular eyepieces, whereas this one has, as stated before, the large elliptical eyepieces, which would have allowed for a wider range of vision and sit much closer to the face. In addition to having the upgraded eyepieces and drinking system, the entire face blank mold has been slightly altered in various ways. For one thing, the rubber is much thinner. The sizes tend to run a bit larger. Like this one, I usually fit a Russian size 3 PMK, but this one is also a size 3, and it is entirely way too large on me. So just keep that in mind when you're buying a PMK-3, is that the sizes will run larger than a PMK-2 or 1. You have the typical voice diaphragm here. It is a little bit different on the inside to accommodate for how the nose cup attaches, but other than that, it is a standard PMK series diaphragm. You have the blanking plug on one side, and you have the 40mm GOST adapter on the other, and you have the typical threaded double outlet valve, which I've screwed on there mighty tight, so I'm not going to try and undo that for the video. Typical 5-point harness, again, not the greatest design. If you apply silicone to it, it's not as bad as it really would have been, but I imagine most of you aren't going to be using silicone on this mask, and so pretty unbearable harness. You can sort of see the unique mold contours of the mask that would allow for the airflow and all that, and etc. The biggest complaint that I have with the mask, other than its general sort of jankiness and loose, floppy, thin feeling to it, the biggest issue that I have with the mask is its breathing resistance. There is a very narrow passage for the air to travel from the internal deflector up into the nose cup. Everything is just sort of squished together, and so it really gives you a very claustrophobic feeling, and it's just not a very enjoyable mask to breathe through. I may try and adjust the position of the deflector to remedy this, but other than that, I've not really been enjoying how this mask breathes. Really not much else to say about the externals. There is some markings right here that you probably can't see. You have a face piece mold of number 3, a very early mold, and then you can see it is made in Tambov mash in the 4th quarter of 2004. So fairly recent mask, kind of an early mold. And then I'll take it off the head here, give you a better look at some of the externals, and then I will try and demonstrate the inside of the face piece, which I may have to remove the lower points of the harness to do that. Here is a good look at the drinking device on the chin piece here, and the person that sent me this actually proved that you can remove these drinking devices and install them on GP21 face pieces. I don't know why you would want to, because the GP21 is terrible, but nevertheless, the GP21 can actually accept these drinking devices if you have one, and you can easily convert it into a PMK-5, which obviously the PMK-5 was never adopted in that configuration, and the Russian military is looking into the PMK-4 currently. But anyways, I digress. On to the internals. Let me undo the harness here, which thankfully is going to be easy to do since I applied silicone to pretty much everything, and everything's nice and smooth, and there's no bloom left over, because actually the person owned this before, whenever he would wear the mask and needed to wash it off, he used like some sort of solvent, and that actually effectively removed 90% of the bloom on this mask, and so it made my job much easier for applying silicone, where I didn't need to scratch off a shit ton of bloom. And so he said that would be that was a detriment to the rubber, but honestly it actually made my job a lot easier. Anyways, reversing the harness here, you can get a good look on the interior of the facepiece. The first thing that you will notice is that the face seal is a loose, floppy mess. This mask is entirely way too thin. It still does its job, but it is a very, very thin mask for a military mask. And as you can see, due to that thinness, it causes all of the thinner portions of the mask to warp. You can also see the drinking tube throughout the bottom of the facepiece there, extending upwards. You can see the voice diaphragm throughout the center, and the metal culvert or ferrule that holds the nose cup into the outlet valve. And probably the most laughable part of the nose cup for me is the fact that they couldn't even mold it as one solid continuous seal, but they had to add 2 studs on either side to keep that peripheral seal folded down over itself. I don't know why they do these things. I don't know what Russia's doing over there. And as you can see, the nose cup is a bit chewed up. It is quite warped, and it tries to mimic the Avon style nose cups, where as you can see, it has a big chute on the top where the air would enter, but it functions relatively well. It's just a very generous nose cup, but really not too much to say about it. And as you can see, it's sort of coming out from beneath or around the voice emitter, so I'm going to need to tuck that back in there. Okay, that's back in there, so really not much to say about the internals. The only other thing to note is that near the temples there are these little rubber bridges here, if you can sort of see that. And what those do is that presses the face seal into your temples for a better seal. It doesn't really feel all that bad. It's actually quite comfortable. This is a very comfy Russian mask, aside from the head harness issues and the drinking device constantly poking you in the upper lip and maybe even into the nose. But it's still a very comfortable mask aside from those issues, and it's quite certainly very it's a decent design, but there needs a lot of improvement into it personally. But overall, I'd give it like, I don't know, maybe a freaking 6 out of 10 maybe, just for those added flaws. But they took a step in the right direction, but they didn't really know how to approach it, and they were still clinging to a lot of their antiquated and archaic manufacturing processes. But you know what, I give them an A for effort at least. So that really much covers it on this mask. That's really all I have to say. I don't think I missed anything. If I did, feel free to inform me down in the comments below. That being said, I'm Duke Nuga 3D. If you have any comments, questions, corrections, or concerns, again, drop them down in the comments below, and I'll see you all later.